So you want to hire an outsourced accountant in the Philippines, but you have questions. One of them being, how do you make sure that your accounting staff in the Philippines continues to be successful long after you hire them? Well, as you can imagine, your job doesn't end there. My name is Isaac Smith. I'm the founder of TeamUp, where we help accountants hire top-tier Filipino accounting staff without any ongoing BPO fees. Today, we're talking about building your team and making sure that it's an effective team. Well, this comes in 3 parts. The first part is finding the right person for the job in the first place. And we talk a lot about that on this channel. There are lots of videos that go into recruiting and hiring and finding that right person. The second part is setting them up for success. We have another video that I went over onboarding and training, and you can find that link in the description below. The third part is what we're going to be talking about today, which is continual leadership and management. Now, this is a big topic. As you can imagine, people have written many books on the subject, so there's no way I can cover this thoroughly in just one video. But I can give you some fundamental frameworks and some things to think about and tips specifically about leading a Philippines-based team. Now, all of this, like I said, this is part 3, so that assumes that you've already taken the actions that I talked about in the previous video on setting them up for success in the first place. So now let's talk about the vision and the communication. So this is where your role as a leader is really starting to come into play. It's more than just management. It's more than just tasks. You as the leader need to constantly sell the vision. And it's really crucial that your vision permeates your company's DNA. People have a deep understanding of it. They know it in their bones, right? So continual repetition of your vision, talking about it constantly, and why this is what we're trying to do here, helps employees understand their roles better and helps them understand the context under which they're working. And that brings me to my next point. Over-explain the context. Explain projects and tasks and their context so that your team can understand their tasks' importance and how they fit into the overall plan. So as you might imagine, right? Everybody's role and everybody's tasks is one piece of the puzzle. And understanding how this piece fits in with the larger whole helps them get a better understanding of what they're doing. The next thing that we want to talk about is encouraging feedback. What you'll want to do, especially in a remote environment and especially in an environment where you're working with people in a different country than you, is create an environment where employees feel comfortable providing feedback. Like I said, especially for a Philippines-based team, where giving direct feedback to the boss is not part of their working culture, and they're actually quite uncomfortable with that. We could talk a lot more about these cultural aspects, and we will in another video, but just for this one, just understand that this is something that they're not quite used to. And so creating an environment where they can do things that they're a little less used to is really important. So the steps that you can take are to encourage small comments and feedback without being overly critical. Be open to suggestions and avoid immediately shooting them down, right? So you can imagine if you're constantly telling people that you appreciate feedback, but then you don't actually take any of their feedback, that's discouraging to them. Again, we'll talk a lot more about this in other videos. The next thing that you need to do is have intentional meetings. So, of course, in a remote environment, we don't have water coolers, we don't have desks next to each other. We can't just pop our head over and say, hey, how you doing, right? What are you doing this weekend? So we actually need to be intentional and create space for relationship building, right? Be intentional about team meetings, and this can doing this can really significantly improve your success. So, for example, here are a couple of things that you could do. You could do a lot more of this. You could be a lot more creative, but here's just a couple things. Have a weekly meeting for the whole team. Make sure that you focus on relationships. Again, like I said, create space that you're not just talking about work. Talk about, your personal lives. Again, what did you do this weekend? How are the kids? That sort of thing. Another thing that is important to do is to have a weekly one-on-one meeting with each of your direct reports. And again, we're going to focus on the relationship. Yes, of course, you're going to talk about work, but make sure that you build that relationship. And in these one-on-ones, we could have, of course, other videos on how to do these one-on-ones, but be there to listen. Listen to their feedback. Listen to their challenges. Another thing that's really important for these meetings is to have video on. I know that a lot of people don't like video. They don't like cameras. There are some things that people just get a little squirmy about, but you know what, guys? We're not in person, right? If you were in person, if you were in the same room across the table from each other, nobody would be going like, oh, don't look at my face, right? That's ridiculous. Come on. We got to have video on for our meetings because that's how you're going to know if people are engaged. If you have the video on and you see there's somebody really just kind of tuned out, maybe you can see them looking down at their phone, right? That sends a message to you. So that's really important to know how engaged your team is. So I could talk more about that, but I think you get the point, right? You just got to do it. If somebody doesn't want to have their video on, you know what? Too bad. We have some requirements for how we work together. The next thing that you can do is have regular performance reviews. This is crucial, but not the old corporate way of doing reviews. When I used to work, when I was an employee, oh gosh, I hated these reviews. I would come in there and they go, well, Isaac, how do you think you're doing? And I would say, I'm doing pretty good. But I know there's some things that I can work on. And then they would say, well, that's interesting. Here's how I think you're doing. And it was always just, that was awful, right? You've been there. So if you can, you should figure out what the KPIs or metrics that you're evaluating your team's performance on, and have these metrics agreed on ahead of time. And so then you can evaluate how they're doing. So here are a few things. You can have a few KPIs, not a million, but a few of your most important metrics, so that you can review actual performance, as well as review your team based on your core values. So hopefully you have your values written down and the team knows them. And you can say, well, how is this person behaving, right? Is this person demonstrating this value or not, right? It's subjective, but it's a little easier. It's a little better than, how do you think you're doing, right? Okay, so to wrap this all up, the topic of leadership and management is so broad and we can talk about this forever, but hopefully those points will at least get you started and going in the right direction. At Team Up, we recruit top-tier Filipino accounting staff for accounting firms. We're a recruiting agency, not a BPO, so there are no ongoing fees. And if you need help with payroll and compliance, we can connect you with an employer of record who can help out in those areas. If you want to learn more about us or learn more about hiring in the Philippines, we have a lot of great resources on our website. That's hireteamup.com. There's a link below, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We're always happy to help. Thanks.